Massachusetts is the birthplace of the American Revolution. The colonists' defiance of the Stamp Act in 1765, the Boston Massacre of 1770, and the Boston Tea Party of 1773 all bring the colonies into becoming their own upstart nation. Boston bred its fair share of patriots for the new country, born on July 4th, 1776. The Sons of Liberty boasted signers of the Declaration of Independence, men who had rallied forth the first calls of defiance against British oppression, calls that will reverberate through the Revolutionary War. Through it all, colonists put themselves on the line as they defy the British Empire. Massachusetts was the first to see battle with the British, from the shots fired in Lexington and Concord to the siege of Boston by the British in 1775. Her men enlisted in the Continental Army when it was formed in June 1775. Of the 37,363 soldiers, 16,449 were from Massachusetts. General George Washington arrived in July, newly in charge of the Continental Army, and he determined to flush the British from Boston. Using heavy armament and cannons brought across country by Colonel Henry Knox, fortifications were set around the city. On March 4th, Washington had the cannons ready to fire down towards the city and harbor. The British evacuated on March 17th, fleeing for the Canadian colony of Nova Scotia. Early on, Massachusetts earns its place as the cradle of liberty. The Declaration of Independence, Episode 4, Massachusetts, the Cradle of Liberty.
The Declaration of Independence I always considered as a theatrical show. Jefferson ran away with all the stage effect of that, and all the glory of it.
John Adams, perhaps the most outspoken of the delegates, is the biggest proponent for independence. Adams grew up on a farm just 15 miles south of Boston. Pushed into an education by his father, John attended Harvard College when only 15 and graduated 5 years later. After 3 years of studying law, Adams struggled as an attorney in Boston. He did become immensely successful by 1770. His most high-profile case was in defending the soldiers who enacted the Boston Massacre. He defended them so well that all were acquitted of murder, with 2 found guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. An active essayist, Adams' work was found in local newspapers. After the 1765 Stamp Act, John Adams began writing anonymous newspaper essays. He soon began to trust the radical movement against England and served in the First Continental Congress in 1774. During the Second Continental Congress in 1775, he personally nominated George Washington as commander of the Continental Army. It was he who pushed the most strongly for independence and was appointed on the Committee of 5 in engineering the Declaration. John Adams held staunch abolitionist views and never owned any slaves. According to him, every measure of prudence, therefore, ought to be assumed for the eventual total extirpation of slavery from the United States. When the Lee Doctrine was approved on July 2nd, Adams felt it should be the celebrated day, not July 4th, when the Declaration was voted upon.
But the day is past. The 2nd day of July, 1776, will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America.
John Adams signs the Declaration of Independence on August 2nd, 1776. Alongside him is his second cousin, Samuel Adams, one of the staunchest and most active of the early revolutionaries. Samuel Adams was born into a well-off Puritan family in Boston, the son of a merchant, a brewer, and political activist. Adams' time studying at Harvard exposed him to the Enlightenment teachings of John Locke and the belief in mankind's need to be free. His master's thesis discussed the lawfulness of resisting the Crown's rule. In 1741, when Samuel was only 19, the British Parliament's ending of land banks left his father liable to pay outstanding mortgages. As such, the family's belongings were seized by the British. Samuel's true calling was politics, and he launched his newspaper, the Independent Advertiser, in 1748. The Advertiser was his forum to broadcast his anti-British beliefs, and he soon became infamous as an outspoken leader. As Britain launched the Stamp Act, Adams formed the Sons of Liberty with Paul Revere, James Otis, and John Hancock. They used intimidation and violence against Britain and her agents. In December 1765, they wrote a letter to stamp tax collector Andrew Oliver.
Provided that you comply with the above, you shall be treated with the greatest politeness and humanity.
Oliver resigned the next day. His house had been looted by the Sons, actions they would repeat for others sympathetic to the Crown. They were also responsible for the Boston Tea Party in December 1773, when they threw 92,000 pounds of British tea overboard into the Boston Harbor. Their actions exacerbated tensions with Britain and helped to spur the Revolutionary War on. Alongside Samuel in the Sons of Liberty and in the signing of the Declaration is John Hancock, the president of the Second Continental Congress. Hancock was raised by his aunt and uncle, a successful merchant in Boston. After attending Harvard, John returned to work for his uncle. His Uncle Thomas's passing in 1764 left 27-year-old Hancock incredibly rich through the inheritance of the company and his uncle's fortune. He entered politics the next year, about the same time as the British began punishing the colonies with taxes. One of his merchant ships, the Liberty, was seized by the British in Boston Harbor, and this led to local protests. It brought Hancock further into conflict with British rule and the call for independence. Already president of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress in 1774, Hancock joined the Second Continental Congress. Both he and Samuel Adams avoided British arrest in Lexington after Paul Revere's famous nighttime ride gave them a lead on their pursuers. Hancock's large signature, made as president of the Congress, was not his only contribution. He will use his wealth to help fund the Revolutionary Army. Lesser known, but no less important, is Robert Treat Paine, who initially tried his hand at everything from teaching to becoming a merchant and even taking a voyage on a whaling boat. Paine returned to Boston in 1756 after serving as chaplain in the French and Indian War and continued his law studies, passing the bar in 1757. He took the role of prosecutor against the British soldiers who were accused of the Boston Massacre, placing him in opposition to their counsel, John Adams. There's one final signer of the Declaration, Elbridge Gerry, who would not put pen to parchment until September 4th, 1776. While attending Harvard in 1758, young Elbridge created his master's thesis in support of the colonial protests to the new prohibitory duties, which make it useless for the people to engage in commerce. Returning to his port home of Marblehead and the family business, Gerry joined the anti-British actions of the town. He was elected to the Massachusetts legislature in 1772, which then became the Provincial Congress. As chairman of the Committee on Supplies from fall 1774 to 1775, he was the hub for coordinating arms and provisions for the burgeoning Revolution. While not as outspoken as contemporaries like John Adams, Elbridge Gerry is determined in persuading other delegates to adopt the need for revolution. John Adams said this:
"If every man here was a Gerry, the liberties of America would be safe against the gates of earth and hell."
The third largest colony, with a population of 235,808, Massachusetts proved amongst the most relevant of colonies in bringing the Declaration of Independence to life. That document will change not just the colonies, but the world. So says Founding Father John Adams.
The Dons, the Bashaws, the Grandees, the Patricians, the Sackhams, the Nabobs, call them by what names you please. Sigh and groan and fret, and sometimes stamp and foam and curse, but all in vain. The decree is gone forth, and it cannot be recalled, that a more equal liberty than has prevailed in other parts of the earth must be established in America.
And that freedom must be fought for. Massachusetts already proved herself more than ready.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.